When was being a single mom a thing? And now that the government's not coming to rescue you, now it's a problem. You shouldn't be a single mom anyway. Black women are crashing out on the internet again. Now they're crashing out because they're crashing out, crying on the internet, because now they're saying that the United States government is not set up to support single moms. So they are saying, Black women are saying, and maybe some other women, and not all Black women are saying saying that the United States government is not set up to help single moms. It's not set up that way. So let's roll it back to the 60s. Remember when the United States government was actually rewarding certain demographics of people to keep men out of their house? Remember? You know what I'm talking about. Y'all were getting.
She's talking about the no man in the house clause.
Food stamps, Medicaid, housing vouchers, and the only stipulation for eligibility was you couldn't be married and there couldn't be a Black man or a man living in your house. You had to be single. And you guys were down for it. And I know this for a fact because my mom had a friend who was on welfare, the more children you had, the bigger your welfare check.
So again, she's referring to the no man in the house clause. You know, the complicated thing about this time too was at the same time you had this going out and there was this basically Black women were able to get assistance from the government as long as there wasn't an able-bodied man there. This is at the same time Black men were systematically being kept out of jobs. She's absolutely right that that was a thing, and this women definitely found themselves in positions where they basically made sure that they were by themselves or didn't have men around or whatever so that they could get the government support. I also think though sometimes there's this narrative created that Black women just woke up someday and were just like, you know what, we just hate all Black men and we want to choose the government and just get rid of Black men. And I think that's not taking into account the environment that was cultivated. There is truth to what she is saying, but we also have to remember that it's rather complicated. You're a woman who has children, and also Black men at that point are literally systematically being kept out of jobs. So they're being in places where they're disenfranchised. And it is a depressed environment. It is an oppressed environment, and people are in survival mode. So while what she is saying is right, I don't think it's necessarily fair to say at that particular time, Black women were just trying to find ways to get rid of Black men. They are not the ones who created the policy, the government did. That did cultivate an environment, and then when you start adding on feminism, and then we start adding on tensions between women probably being like, why can't Black men take care of me? But Black men being frustrated that they literally can't get jobs because of systematic racism and Jim Crow laws or whatever. It's a powder keg. And so it just created this disdain. But now on top of that, what is the fascinating thing though, is that as the trend continues, Moynihan Scissors shows that as unemployment goes down, right, as Black men start to get access to more resources, basically to jobs, the Black female welfare goes up. And so this is why now you have people who start to argue that say, hey, you guys, at some point you did choose the government over us. I believe the environment was cultivated. And as Black men weren't there, generation after generation, you have a matriarch, you have feminism that's cultivated, and then you have distrust that has been cultivated, that's been there in the Black community since day one, because that stuff was fostered in the plantation culture. I think it did create the environment we're seeing now, where women said, oh, we don't need men. We've had generations of them not being there. Government's doing this. It's easier to not know how to get along with a man. It's more comfortable for me to depend upon the environment. And this is the environment that she's talking about.
And I know this for a fact because my mom had a friend who was on welfare. The more children you had, the bigger your welfare check.
Oh, that's
you guys were good with that.
No, that's absolutely true. And this is where I'm saying it cultivated an environment. I don't know that I could say that Black women just woke up one day at that time and said, okay, we want to get rid of Black men. Bye. I think it was more of it was an oppressed environment and Black men and women were surviving and that created tensions. I think that's more accurate. At the same time, you absolutely had that cultivating a culture where Black women were just like, oh shoot, all I gotta do is just have babies and depend upon the government and that's it. And so that happened. With that said, let's just be clear that white people have historically benefited from welfare more than Black people. Let's just be clear about that. And I'm saying that doesn't change the fact that there are absolutely black folks who sit up here and do some crazy stuff. But so often we paint this picture that black people are the only ones using welfare, but I'm like, there are white people who use welfare all the time. I mean, white people are the majority of the country. So just if you think just purely from a number standpoint, there are more of them on welfare generally than black people. Black women aren't the only ones out here doing crazy stuff. Just unfortunately, we do it at such a high percentage and are oftentimes so vocal about it and obnoxious about it. It's hard to miss. Okay, let's continue.
Pumping out babies and on the government's tit. But now, because Trump is putting a kibosh on the eligibility requirements, you guys are crying, saying that the United States is not built to support single moms. When was being a single mom a thing? And now that the government's not coming to rescue you, now it's a problem. You shouldn't be a single mom anyway. Now, there are a lot of women, hear me before you go in the comments, that are single moms for several different reasons. My mother was a single mom. People get divorced. Shit happens all the time. People need assistance, government assistance, every once in a while, maybe not. But the goal is, can you help me? And then you work to not have to be reliant.
Yeah, the goal is to be assisted, not for that to be your employment or your long-term job. That's what she's saying. And I completely agree. Like, I am so not against programs or things that can help people who need assistance, because I recognize in a capitalistic economy, there might be times where people need assistance. That is so common, particularly when you have marginalized communities. So I am not opposed to that. The issue that has happened is that you have people who take advantage of it, who don't use it for their assistance. They use it as just a cop-out. They use it to fund their habits. They use it to not have to, work themselves, and they take advantage. And that makes it really difficult for people who actually do need it, just to tie them over until they get into a better spot. It really does.
Black women, specifically the ones crying, not all, you guys just thought that the free train was just gonna keep on riding down the track, all at the same time calling Black men specifically toxic masculinity. All you guys, the women, aggressive, acting like men. The men are, at fundraisers in red dresses. You guys are like supporting them. Black men don't want to have nothing to do with Black women anymore. You guys are mad about that. But now, because your EBT has been cut off or cut in half, and you have to have a work eligibility to even qualify, you have to have a work eligibility to get Medicaid unless you're a senior or disabled, now it's a problem. But it wasn't a problem a couple weeks ago when y'all were getting free bundles at the hair beauty care place opening up.
I can't with you. She's clowning. And listen, like I said, Black people, we all know exactly who she's talking about. We've all seen it before. And like I said, them be the people who actually screw it up for those who could actually use it to try to get ahead or to tie them over as they're just trying to navigate a difficult situation. It be them ones who try to have hella kids just to get a governmental check to live up in them big old McMansions. And I'm saying this because I literally see this with my own eyes. Like, you have some women who are having kids, not because they want to raise them kids, because they just want a governmental check. And half the time they can't stand them kids. They're yelling at them all the time. They're trying to give them away, leave them at the schools when they can, or have them be with somebody else because they don't want to deal with them. Because they didn't really care about them. They just needed them to get the check, to get the big house that they wanted, and to live off of the assistance. So, and what I'm trying to say is, part of this is definitely the decisions of generations of adults, for sure. But what I'm also trying to say was that, like, this is partially cultivated. I'm not going to sit here and just put all the ills of the Black community and all of the ills associated with this on Black women's decisions. No, it's a lot more complicated than that. It was literally strategic, in my opinion. It was strategic warfare against the Black family through policies, through systematic policies and systematic decisions that were made to completely separate Black men and Black women. And when you do that enough times over generations, and then when you added feminism, added distrust that was already inherent within the Black community going all the way back to the plantation, because the distrust was cultivated because obviously the plantation workers didn't want that slaves trusting each other because they could revolt. So distrust has always been there. It's always been cultivated. You add in distrust, you add in feminism, you add in all the ills and all the traumas associated with being the oppressed class and being slaves, and then And then on top of that, the financial challenges that you obviously are going to deal with when you're trying to rebuild and you're running from like the Klan, and you build a house that gets burned down, you run over here. It's a mess. It's a powder keg. And then you add, like I said, feminism, which is just another huge monkey wrench. And it cultivates this powder keg that we have going on today. Yeah, so I'm just trying to say it's not as just simple as, oh, Black women just don't want to work. We obviously know that those kinds exist. We do. I'm just trying to articulate that when we understand the Black American experience, the African American experience, it's incredibly nuanced. We haven't been told our history. Oftentimes we're gaslit when we express it and for what it really is. And we don't understand we don't always understand the ways that we've been systematically targeted to just not get along, to not like each other, to not have a family. Because what I've learned is that like when Black men and Black women actually get along, that's a threat to some people, and that's what they don't want. So anyways, y'all, that's what I have. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comment section. Thank you so much for listening if you've gone this far, and we'll talk later. Bye.